What if the story of humanity is not a story of Earth? What if our most profound questions of origin, of gods and myths, are not questions at all, but echoes of a forgotten history? A history not of this world, but of the one we see as a crimson star in our night sky, Mars. The search for this truth begins on that desolate world, a place that feels less like an alien planet and more like a forgotten cradle. The evidence begins not with grand monuments, but with the ghost of water. On the floor of a vast canyon, an explorer kneels beside an ancient, dried riverbed, the very memory of rushing water a haunting presence in the pale amber sky. It's a landscape that forces a confrontation between what science tells us is possible and the unsettling feeling that this world once lived and breathed as our own. The questions escalate at the foot of a weathered monument, a colossal formation that seems to stare back with a human-like face. Is it a trick of geology or a weathered monument of a civilization we were forced to forget? What if the arid, red desert is not Mars's true state, but a tragic memory? What if, long ago, it was a paradise of lush valleys, flowing rivers, and turquoise skies, a world that felt so much like home because it was home? This feeling solidifies into hard evidence among the ruins of a crumbled alien city. An archaeologist's hands brush against colossal broken pillars, their grandeur still echoing in the crimson sunset. The ruins of this lost civilization stretch to the edge of a colossal dried ocean floor, its salt-like ridges glistening under a pale, lonely sun. The ghost of a vanished sea raises the ultimate question. If a world that cradled oceans and civilizations once thrived here, what catastrophic event destroyed them? Was it the planet's own fury, the roaring dust storms that still rage with enough power to swallow cliffs and suggest a world in its death throes? Or was the cataclysm something far more deliberate? The first clue to that answer is held in an archaeologist's trembling, gloved hands, a smooth, black artifact etched with glowing geometric carvings. A relic that suggests a culture not just of stone, but of advanced technology. It hints at a lost golden age, of majestic coastal cities with shining towers and turquoise harbors, a splendor so profound it begs the question, what truth forced their exodus from Mars to a new home on Earth? The narrative is no longer one of gentle migration. It becomes a desperate flight for survival. In a flash of memory, we see colossal starships lifting from the red desert, their engines igniting in a blinding blue glare, a testament to a civilization escaping a dying world. The clues they left are not just in stone, but in the stars themselves. An astrophysicist, haunted by sleepless nights, finds that the orbital patterns of Mars and the constellations of Earth's sky are interwoven, a celestial breadcrumb trail left for their descendants. The evidence then turns inward to the very code of life. A researcher, surrounded by projections of Martian skies, holds a shimmering double helix of human DNA, wondering if our genetic code is not a product of Earth, but a celestial fingerprint pointing back to a Martian origin. The story continues underground, in half-collapsed caverns where geometric carvings cover the walls, a story preserved by a civilization desperate for its memory to survive. Their final days were not just of engineering, but of ritual. We see them in a vision, their faces painted with luminous pigments, moving in a synchronized rhythm under a surreal emerald sky, their ceremonies looking less like prayers to gods and more like preparations for an exodus. A historian, surrounded by holograms of planetary shockwaves, confronts the apocalyptic truth: Mars was destroyed. The cause remains the central debate. Was it a natural disaster, a colossal asteroid blazing through the atmosphere, turning cities to dust and forcing the last survivors to flee? Or was it a self-inflicted wound, a tragic nuclear apocalypse of their own making, leaving the plains scorched and haunted by the ghosts of their own temples? Either way, the result was the end of a world. The final, heartbreaking image is of a child, her face streaked with dirt and tears, clutching a glowing crystal pendant, a fragile beacon of hope amidst the smoke and ruins of her home. This wasn't just the death of a planet, but the birth of a profound scar, a wound so vast it's visible from orbit. The colossal canyon system of Valles Marineris, a geological wonder that feels less like a natural feature and more like a mistake that cost a civilization its world. The evidence is overwhelming. Broken statues that echo our own image lie half buried in the sand, and colossal ruins that rival the temples of Angkor are carved into the rock, a silent testament to a grandeur now lost to myth. We see them, our ancestors, planting a flag not of discovery, but of reclamation, its emblem an intertwined strand of DNA. The walls of their caverns display star maps of Orion, a celestial roadmap guiding the survivors on their journey to Earth. Science dismisses these patterns as illusions of coincidence, but myth preserves them as the memory of exile. We see a vision of what was lost, a shimmering Martian lake in a lush basin, a paradise that once mirrored Earth's own vitality. We see the proof, a corroded metallic tool of intricate design, a technology too advanced for a primitive world. We see the undeniable link, Martian minerals that share an identical crystalline structure with those on Earth, a geological signature that binds the two worlds together. And in a sterile lab, a researcher makes the forbidden discovery. Human DNA did not originate on Earth. Mars is not a relic. It is a memory, living still within the very essence of humanity. The revelation that humanity's origins may lie on Mars forces us to re-examine our most ancient and sacred myths. What if they are not allegories, but the fragmented, desperate logbooks of a civilization in exile? The evidence for this exodus is not just a theory. It is a story written in stone, in technology, and in the very stars they followed. The journey begins in a colossal stone doorway, forced open by modern explorers to reveal a haunting truth. A cavern lined with towering humanoid statues, their faces eerily resembling our own. The statues are not just stone. A fractured colossus reveals a glowing metallic core, a fusion of art and technology that pulses in sync with the explorers' own equipment. The beings who built this were not gods, but survivors. The walls of their final sanctuaries depict their history not as myth, but as a recorded fact, starships rising into a crimson sky, a desperate departure from a dying world. Their final days were a flurry of preparation. In a vision of their last golden age, we see a brilliant city of crystalline towers, a civilization at its peak, yet fragile and on the verge of collapse. Their last act was to reach out across time, activating ancient control panels and staring at holographic projections of a distant, blue world, Earth, their chosen destination. For the explorers who find these records, the realization is intimate and terrifying. Earth was not a discovery. It was a targeted refuge. The Exodus itself was an event of apocalyptic grandeur. We see the last citizens of Mars, their faces filled with a mixture of hope and despair, gathering at the foot of colossal starships as the sky burns around them. This was not a graceful departure. It was a flight of survival, a story of heartbreak written on the faces of families being torn apart as they boarded the vessels that held their future. The launch was a cataclysm of fire and sound, the desert plains trembling as radiant sapphire thrusters tore through the crimson haze, a violent, desperate, and final farewell to a dying world. From orbit, the view is solemn and mournful. The astronaut's visor reflects the fading image of a red planet shrinking into shadow, the only light coming from the fiery trails of its children fleeing into the eternal night. Their new home was not an accident. Deep within their sanctuaries, they left behind not just historical records, but gateways. Explorers today descend into colossal sinkholes, finding subterranean tunnels etched with glowing glyphs that pulse with a faint, blue light. These are not just inscriptions. They are warnings, leading to ancient altars that seem to be a fusion of temple and control station. At the heart of one of these chambers, a colossal subterranean tower erupts with a radiant turquoise beam, a power core that served as the last heartbeat of Mars, and perhaps a beacon aimed at Earth. The artifacts left behind confirm this. A small metallic relic, shaped like a miniature starship, serves as a physical memory of the vessels that carried them. As the fleet of starships finally leaves the red planet, the last images are of children, their tear-streaked faces pressed against viewports, watching their world disappear forever. History may record this as myth, but the evidence suggests it was a calculated exile. They were leaving a world that was once a paradise, a place of lush valleys and flowing crimson rivers, a memory of innocence and joy now buried under dust. The plan was deliberate. Their command chambers show holographic projections of the solar system, with a radiant beam of light connecting Mars to Earth, a destination mapped long before our own history began. What science now dismisses as fantasy, their legends preserved as a memory of this journey. The finality of their departure is absolute, the starships fading into the black void, leaving their dying cradle behind. Their arrival on Earth was not as conquerors, but as survivors. The first explorers step onto our world, leaving the first footprints on a new homeworld, their helmets reflecting a strange, crimson sky. The initial survey is conducted by drones, their lenses scanning the jagged canyons of a primitive Earth, searching not for threats, but for remnants of a plan set in motion millennia ago. Deep within their expedition domes, scientists uncover the first shocking truth. Holographic scans reveal symmetrical, pyramid-like structures already buried beneath the sands of this new world. Following the data, explorers enter narrow canyons that feel less like natural rock and more like the corridors of something deliberately built. There, they find the proof. A massive stone slab etched with carvings of constellations, not as they appear from Mars, but as they appear from Earth's night sky. This confirms the most incredible part of the story. They were not the first. In a vision, we see their ancestors, the original Martian settlers, long before the Great Exodus, mapping the stars from Earth, their rituals connecting the two worlds. The impossible alignment of Orion's belt over both the pyramids of Earth and the ruins of Mars is no longer a coincidence. It is a shared signature. Science calls it a paradox. Myth calls it memory. The explorers push deeper, finding ceramic shards and massive stone pillars that seem to be both monuments and signal relays. This was not a random landing. It was a planned trajectory, an arrival at a destination that had been prepared for them, a map written in stone by their own forebears. The Exodus was not just a journey, it was an act of preservation. The Martian survivors, carrying the memory of a lost world, did not arrive on Earth as conquerors, but as ancestors. Their first act was not to build an empire, but to plant a seed of knowledge, of culture, and of their own DNA, merging their lineage with the nascent life of this new planet. Their arrival was a spectacle of fire and hope. We see their colossal starships piercing Earth's atmosphere, descending not as weapons of war, but as arks carrying the last children of a dying world. Their first steps on the lush, ancient shoreline were ones of awe and reverence, the survivors stepping barefoot onto the wet sand, touching the soil of their new Eden with a mixture of sorrow and wonder. In this fertile valley, they began to build, not just shelters, but the first monuments of memory, their advanced tools and primitive ropes working in unison to raise colossal stones against a radiant dawn. The pyramids of Earth, it turns out, echo the forgotten architecture of Mars. These monuments were not built as tombs for kings, but as memory markers for a civilization determined not to be forgotten. Their fleet dispersed across the globe, seeding the diaspora that would shape the future of countless cultures. The first temples on Earth, like Göbekli Tepe, now seem less like the dawn of human worship and more like a Martian echo, a memory preserved in stone. But their most profound act was not architectural, it was biological. In a valley lit by fire, we see the survivors, their faces solemn, extending their hands to the early Homo sapiens tribes of Earth. This was the moment two worlds blended into one. The evidence is not just in myth, but in our very code. Holographic projections show two distinct DNA strands, one from the Martian survivors, one from early humans, merging seamlessly into a single helix. Humanity, as we know it, was forged in this fusion, a union sealed in sacred ritual fire under a moonlit sky. The result was the birth of a new lineage, the first child of two worlds, their innocent eyes shimmering with a light that was neither fully Martian nor fully human, but something new. Our genealogy, when traced back far enough, no longer stops at the cradle of Africa. It points to the red star in the sky, a heritage that belongs to both planets. The legacy of Mars was etched directly into the fabric of Earth. We see the colossal Sphinx being shaped not by primitive hands alone, but under the guidance of a Martian elder with a glowing crystalline staff, their knowledge raising monuments that would defy time. The proof is hidden in plain sight. Faint geometric carvings on the monument's paws, glyphs identical to those found in the ruins of Mars. The great wonders of the ancient world were not just feats of human ingenuity. They were Martian memories, a way of ensuring their story survived even after they were gone. This story is woven into our very DNA, a double helix that now spirals across the continents, a genetic inheritance that forever binds the two worlds. For the scientists who uncover this truth, the realization is overwhelming and emotional. Our entire history is predicated on a forgotten exile. The crimson past of Mars fades, and the radiant blue future of Earth begins, a transition not of conquest, but of genesis. This new humanity found their Eden in the fertile valleys of a young Earth. The children of this union, with their luminous eyes and joyful laughter, represent an innocence that carries the memory of the stars in their very blood. The story of Mars now survives not in stone, but within us. We are, and have always been, the children of two worlds. In the final days, before the memory was sealed away, the story of the arrival was still told. We see the last starships descending, the first survivors stepping onto the golden beaches, and the children touching the soil of a new world with reverence. Their first night was one of sorrow and hope, huddled around campfires in a strange, lush forest, survival slowly turning into settlement. They made a choice. A warrior buries his crystalline weapon deep in the fertile soil, burying the violence of the past to choose a future of peace. The first encounter between the Martian survivors and the native humans of Earth was a moment of suspense and mystery. It was a meeting that would define our species, a spark across time that led not to conflict, but to a sacred union. An elder Martian extends a trembling hand, an offering of peace across worlds, and a rugged human hand reaches back to grasp it, sealing the first bond between two lineages. Around a great fire, barriers fall and kinship is born. As two people share food and stories, their futures now intertwined. The union was not conquest, but a conscious, sacred fusion of two peoples into one. The union of the two worlds was complete. The children of Mars and the children of a young Earth were now one people, a new humanity forged in the crucible of exile and rebirth. But the survivors knew that for their descendants to thrive, the traumatic memory of their exodus had to be put to rest. Before they allowed themselves to forget, they undertook one final, monumental task: to encode the memory of their journey not as history, but as myth, as ritual, and as sacred art, leaving behind a permanent echo of their origin for a future generation to one day rediscover. This story was written into the very myths of our ancestors. We see a Homo sapiens shaman, his eyes wide with reverence, painting a glowing red circle, the image of Mars, on a cave wall, placing it among the familiar images of hunts and animals. The Martian glyphs are etched alongside, a sacred fusion of two cultures. This was the moment the memory of Mars officially entered human mythology. It became a story told by firelight, a tale of gods and heroes that was, in truth, the veiled history of survivors. The children of the tribes, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames, listened to these stories, clutching pendants carved in the shape of stars, their own inherited memory resonating with the tales of their elders. These myths were not just stories, they were living memories. The survivors knew that memory could also be preserved in stone. They guided their new kin, their knowledge of advanced engineering blending with the raw strength of early humans, to raise the great monuments of the ancient world. They built Stonehenge, not as a mere temple, but as a memory code, its pillars aligned to the stars they once navigated. An archaeologist today, scanning the monument at night, can see the alignment, a celestial code that echoes the forgotten memory of Mars. They raised the Sphinx, a fusion of their technology and our hands. Its form a silent testament to their legacy. And deep within the pyramids, they hid their final secrets. An archaeologist, shining a lamp on a hidden chamber wall, finds the undeniable proof, a glowing Martian glyph, a signature left by the builders, confirming that Mars was etched into the very foundations of Egypt. The gods that humanity remembered were, in fact, the survivors of a fallen world. Their story was told in every ritual, every painting, every monument. A shaman's painting of a starship was not a fantasy, but a memory. The stories told to children were not fiction, but history veiled in awe. Our myths became reflections of their survival, and Mars itself, the red star in the sky, was remembered as a god. The monuments they inspired us to build were aligned to the stars of their memory, stone testaments speaking across time. They carved the story of their exodus onto stone reliefs, a history of starships rising from a crimson planet, ensuring the memory would survive even if the meaning was lost. And in the smoky caverns of our most distant past, our ancestors copied these sacred glyphs, translating a memory of science into an act of faith. Culture itself became an inherited memory, and the study of our own past became an unconscious act of remembering our cosmic origins. Their knowledge was carved into the mountains of the Andes, the great stone terraces of Machu Picchu serving as another celestial map. The alignments of these sacred sites are not accidental. They are a sky code, echoing the science of the Martian survivors. Our civilization, in essence, is an inheritance from this exile. They gifted us not just their bloodline, but their language, their knowledge passed down from elder to youth in primitive villages illuminated by firelight, a sacred trust to ensure the story would not die. The memory of Mars was painted in our art, a red star surrounded by constellations, an echo of exile that our ancestors could not explain but felt compelled to record. Their final act was to embrace their new home, to stand upon the mountain ridges of this lush, green world and accept a future where their past would become a whisper, a dream, a myth. Their two worlds, Mars and Earth, were now encoded into one humanity, a single lineage born of a forgotten memory. The memory was sealed. The history of the Martian exodus was successfully translated into the myths, monuments, and bloodline of a new, unified humanity. For millennia, the story survived not as fact, but as a latent echo, a dream of gods and golden ages, a whisper of an alien heritage that we were taught to dismiss as fantasy. But memory, however deeply buried, can never be truly erased. In the modern age, the age of science and exploration, the whispers have returned, not as myths, but as data. The story of rediscovery begins where the story of forgetting ended, with our most ancient and enigmatic civilizations. A historian, in a dusty library, finds that the glyphs of the Maya perfectly match the symbols found in Martian ruins, a forgotten code suddenly rediscovered. On a windswept plateau, an archaeologist scans an ancient statue, revealing hidden carvings of spacecraft beneath the surface, technology concealed within sacred art. The gods we worshipped are redefined as the survivors we forgot. Science and myth begin to converge as a researcher finds that the structure of our DNA perfectly aligns with ancient glyph projections. The memory is no longer just a feeling. It is an observable fact, reawakening in a new generation. A child, gazing through a telescope at the crimson glow of Mars, feels an unexplainable pull, a yearning for a forgotten home. The search for aliens has become an act of remembering ourselves. Our own technology becomes the key to unlocking the past. A NASA rover, crawling across the barren plains of Mars, stumbles upon the eroded remains of a statue that undeniably resembles a human face, a ghost of our own image staring back at us from a dead world. In a dimly lit control room, a NASA scientist stares at her glowing data screens, her skepticism collapsing into awe as the Martian glyphs are found to match the sequences of human DNA. Science, which was born from our attempts to understand the world, now reveals a truth born from another. A futuristic drone soars over the red desert, revealing a colossal pyramid, half buried in dust, a lost piece of architecture that proves the two worlds are linked. An archaeologist, in a lab shimmering with projections, confirms the impossible. The alignment of the Martian structures and Earth's pyramids are identical, a celestial echo that cannot be dismissed as coincidence. The genetic bridge between the planets is the final, irrefutable proof. A child, on a quiet night, presses her hand against the cold glass of an observatory dome, her eyes fixed on Mars, her yearning a testament to a memory that lives in our blood. This memory has been preserved in the oldest continuous traditions on our planet. An indigenous tribe, in a sacred ritual, dances around a blazing fire, their chants honoring the red star, a living myth of Mars preserved for generations. A modern anthropologist watches, scribbling in his notebook, finally understanding that science must listen to these ancient voices. The story of our exile is carried in every myth. In a vision of the deep past, we see the final gift being given. A Martian elder places a radiant turquoise crystal into the trembling hands of an early human, a vessel containing the memory of their entire race. That gift was transformed into ritual and eventually into mythology. Today, an archaeologist scans one of these same crystals and is stunned to find that data streams flicker within its structure. The memory was locked inside. When activated, the crystal projects a shimmering double helix, a perfect image of the human code, a final testament from our ancestors. A scientist, watching this revelation, whispers in disbelief, finally understanding that our very identity was found in a crystal, a message in a bottle sent across an ocean of time. Humanity, it is now clear, is the living memory of Mars. This truth is carried in the innocent joy of children running with star-shaped lanterns under a night sky, their laughter an echo of a forgotten age. And above them, the red star of Mars glows, a silent watcher, remembered in every upward gaze.